All right, guys, on Oral Sessions today, joined by none other than the masterminds behind Dark Side of the Ring, Jason Eisener, Evan Husney. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I feel like there's a million things that I want to pick your guys' brains on. I mean, I feel like there's so much cool wrestling content, especially right now. And you guys are at like that tippy top. You guys have been kind of crushing it for some time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Have
awesome.
Have any of has WWE tried to like scoop you guys up? They must
scoop us up? No, I think they're probably wanting to do the opposite. They want to scoop us away.
Well, but I mean, at least creatively, what you guys are doing. I mean, yes, having that like peek behind the curtain and telling these amazing stories, but I think like creatively what you guys are able to do. I mean, you can't deny that, even if you're talking about they might want to sweep under the rug.
Right. No, I mean, we're fans, we're huge wrestling fans. I mean, and I've been, I was raised on, WWE stuff, for sure. I actually had a job interview at WWE once.
How did that go? What was it for?
It was actually funny enough after we did season 1 of the show. So before it had come out, I was just looking for, picking up some freelance producing work, and I saw a posting for WWE. I'm like, well, why not? And so I actually went up there, and it was like, make sure you bring a suit. Got to bring a suit.
Remember that.
I don't own a suit.
Yeah,
I don't own a suit.
What did you do? What did you wear?
I like went to Zara and like got fitted, for my WWE, interview, and it was funny. And I'm friends with Bruce Pritchard from our season 1. This is before he went back to the company and was like asking him for pointers and all this stuff, and it was so wild. And then I like went there, interviewed with like 73 people, and
they put you through the gauntlet. They did, not one person. They did the same to me. I was like, what? I thought I was going to be there for 30 minutes. I was there for like what felt like a week.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was like, okay, so who's our champion right now? You know who our champion
Did
is?
they really?
Did you? Yeah. And I said, I don't know, but I bet it's Brock Lesnar, whatever. And of course, and that, but it was amazing. Like, what's your familiarity level with the, I was like, well, I've interviewed 60 wrestlers, for a television, like what, and so it was interesting, but, wow, could have been a different story, we're telling today, if I actually didn't get the job. I didn't get the job.
It's funny how things like that happen, that like it is totally a blessing in disguise, because we would not have Dark Side of the Ring, at least not the second and third seasons of it. They would have shut that down 100%.
Yeah I mean, it was like a freelance thing, so it would have been like 3 months or whatever, but who knows? You never know. Maybe I would have moved on to a permanent situation. Who knows?
You could have been on the road. You could have been sitting in those production meetings, just learning it all, being a part of the whole big wheel.
Could have gotten in the ring. Could have done a run in it too.
Yeah, let's take a bump. We're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did the whole concept come together for you guys to put together Dark Side of the Ring?
Gosh, it must have been well, basically a few years ago, Evan and I, we were obsessed with the history of wrestling, and we were kind of developing, like taking all these stories that we were researching and developing like a narrative scripted like TV series idea. Like we wanted to do kind of like, the Sopranos epic Boogie Nights telling of the, the old territory days of wrestling. But when we took that to Hollywood and we pitched that to people, it just like went over every executive's like head. And so we thought, well, we're not going to get this off the ground, but like, let's see if we can try and, tell a story or two out of in a documentary format. And so we became obsessed with the story of Bruiser Brody, which was our pilot episode for season 1. And, at first we thought that was going to be it. Like it could just be this one documentary. But that then, we got the order to make more episodes. And so we made 6 of them, and, that did well. And then the rest was history after that.
So what was the pitching process like for you guys, trying to get the show up and running, trying to take it to the executives in Hollywood that just weren't getting the wrestling brand?
Well, yeah, I mean, just like what Jason was saying, when we wanted to do like a like a more of a scripted dramatic series, like we mentioned earlier that, wrestling content, there's so much of it now. Back then, this is even before Glow came out. There was nobody had any interest. It was like wrestling, whatever that hokey stuff, so there was no appetite for it in TV or in movies or anything. And the Brody one really fit that for us, because it was like, this is a true crime story, like entangled in the world of wrestling, like in the locker room. And here's a guy who's very different than his in-ring character, and he has a family, but then like, the wrestling storylines spill out into the courtroom, and who knows what's real. And this guy gets off for essentially murdering Bruiser Brody, and it was just a wild story. So I remember pitching it as that, like, here's true crime in the world of wrestling. That's what we want to tell. And Jason and I just like really wanted to see wrestling content or wrestling documentary stuff like just elevated, like all the wrestling documentaries, which we love. There's many we love, but or shoot interviews. You watch a lot of these shoot interviews, and they're all like shot on someone's high-8 camera in a like Ramada, which is cool. I'm down for that, and I'm down for that because it adds to the experience. But we're like, if you could get a great lens, awesome, music, just elevate it, bring it to make it seem like the most important thing in the world. Like, I think it would work. And so that was kind of the whole pitch, was like, this is a wild world. This is like country music in the 60s and 70s. Just
Wild West.
Wild West, traveling up and down the roads, just like, have to live your gimmick and kayfabe and all that stuff. And that was kind of what the pitch was. And then the Brody story, just being as wild as it is, was kind of the one that really, pushed it over the edge, I think, for Vice.
So so you guys brought it to Vice. Were you already working for Vice at the time?
I was, yeah. I was there as like a staff producer, producing documentaries for them. And I pitched it to my department there, and they were like, this is too expensive. There's no way we can afford this. Sorry. And then they launched the TV network shortly thereafter. And then they were like, all right, if you want to pitch ideas for the TV show, like, let's hear them. And then I was like, I got one. And then it just kind of worked. It just fell into play. It took a while. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it. It was months and months and months of convincing and hurdles and, money and budgets and things like that. But yeah, it took about a year probably before we started shooting it.
It's really funny how that kind of goes, because I mean, even just like some pitches that I've had, like even especially since I've left WWE, like taking general meetings with other places, or like, tell me about wrestling. Like, people are really starting, and I should just say starting. I mean, obviously it's been around for forever, but like you said, it can be this very niche world that the rest of Hollywood kind of keeps at an arm's distance, where now I think people are really starting to be like, okay, wait, first of all, the fan base for wrestling is absolutely insane and voracious, and they want to consume everything. So I think like other networks starting to realize that. I mean, obviously you look at shows like Young Rock, you look at what A&E is now doing with the documentaries.
Yeah.
I mean, this stuff is all just really taking off. There's so many different platforms for these stories to exist. One thing that I really love that you guys do is having the reenactments. Your reenactments are so good. Oh, I love watching them. When John and we were watching back the bit for what he's doing with Nick Gage's episode with the pizza slicer episode, he's like, oh my God, look at the guy like being me with the pizza slicer. It's nuts.
We wanted to have reenactments in the show, but I mean, we were like, yeah, we'll figure it out down the line. We'll just, get sets and we'll have actors and period. I was like, no, we can't afford that. And Jason came up, had this eureka moment with some action figures and figured it out.
Yeah. I was staying at Evan's apartment in Brooklyn, and we were developing the show, and we're trying to figure out like, how are we going to do these reenactments, to do period and build sets and all the costumes and the casting, like, it seemed almost impossible. But I was like staging out like some shots just with like my cell phone. I put it into slow motion. I took a flashlight, and I was shooting the scene with Tony Atlas trying to save Bruiser Brody's life from the pilot episode. And I did that, and then I actually like filmed myself I saying a couple of Dutch's lines I've heard in previous interviews.
Yeah.
And then I cut it together with the music, and then I showed it to Evan when he came back to the apartment. And at first it was like, damn, can we do this with the action figures?
Did we just do it?
Yeah. And then, because like in wrestling, like all the usually when you just see like a wrestler's character silhouette, like if you just saw the silhouette, that's like that iconic like character. So we just have to try and get the silhouettes down and that can go a long way. And hopefully, the idea that we want to do is with everyone speaking directly to camera, and with like the music having this sort of like Philip Glass kind of trance-like quality, and then with these blurry reenactments that people feel like they're transported like into these like long lost memories kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I would say mission accomplished. It's been such a fun journey watching these, and like some like stories that I've been unfamiliar with. And like, I have a lot of times people are like, hey, I want to get into wrestling. Where should I start? I'm like, well, what side of wrestling do you want to know about? And I often will point people in your guys' direction. I'm like, oh, wow. Do you want to get hooked into some like crazy shit and like know about some of like the vaudevillain circus crazy shit that can happen in wrestling? I mean, go check out Dark Side of the Ring. It's so cool. Awesome. How did you guys meet?
Gosh.
It was at Sundance in 2009, I think.
How fancy. What a posh answer.
I
know. We were at Sundance at the cocktail party.
Kate Hudson was there.
Evan was working for this like indie horror movie company called Trauma that were responsible for Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High.
Garbage movies. And
they every year would set up down the street as kind of like this, like the punk response to the Sundance Film Festival. I had a short film at the time called Treevenge playing at Sundance, and it's about Christmas trees fighting back on Christmas Day, and that made it into Sundance. But the Trauma guys wanted me to like come up and like hang out with them, and I met Evan there, and we just hit it off like instantly. And I think wrestling was one of the first things that we really bonded over. Because it's like when you meet like another wrestling fan, especially when you're in the entertainment world that, like we were saying, kind of like pushes wrestling to the side. When you find somebody else in the entertainment world that has the same appreciation for wrestling, you then just like instantly get it.
We're best friends.
Yeah, you just like, you have an understanding that, everyone else at this festival doesn't quite have, And so
how are you like at a festival like that and start talking about wrestling? Like, how does that even come up amongst two grown ass men that are just like hanging out being like, yo, you catch whatever show?
Well, it wasn't just wrestling though, because it was also like, we had the interest in like weird Canadian, shot on 8mm Super 8 horror films, and
hell yeah.
Just really bizarre, like a lot of parallels. Wasn't just wrestling, it was like movies, wrestling, music, like some metal crossover, like lots of different things that just we were like, wow, we had similar childhoods, but we're raised in different parts of North America. But it's like, I think from there it was kind of like, okay, it spiraled into that, and then like wrestling was like, wow, we did have a similar childhood with like, we both had, wrestling had a profound effect on us as kids, but also creatively. Like we're inspired by like the color palettes of 80s WWF is like, just unbelievable, and like all that had a profound impact on us. And we had like defining moments as wrestling fans as kids. Jason has the best one ever with, your encounter with Skinner,
Yeah.
Like,
you're going to be telling me that story in a second.
Yeah, you should. And, so it's like, it was like, we had different, we had the same paths, and we just clicked on that. But yeah, Jason, come on, Skinner.
Tell me your story. Did this all happen in you're in Dartmouth at this point in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, my uncle took me to WWF came when I was like 10 years old, and like Hogan was on the card, Macho Man Randy Savage was, and me and my cousin, my uncle, we were sitting right along the guardrail, like kind of midway to the entrance into the ring. And like Macho Man like slapped my hand, and it was blew my mind. And then like out comes Skinner, who's got this like Southern Outback gimmick. And me and my cousin are like yelling at him. We're like, "You suck, you suck!" And he locked eyes onto us, and he just like came over, and he like grabbed us by the scruffs of our like shirts and pulled us over the guardrail. And like with his like chewing tobacco, I could smell. He's just like leans in, and he's like, "I'm gonna skin you," and we were like, and he dropped us, and we were so scared we didn't make another peep like the rest of the night.
That's such an amazing story, because I feel like the story here is like, man, like Bret Hart came down and gave me the glasses, like it's always these like feel good moments. You're like, no, I was threatened by Skinner.
Yeah.
The most Dartmouth thing that could have happened to you happened to you.
That's very Dartmouth. Are you in Dartmouth right now? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here right now. I'm in my place in Dartmouth. Hell yeah.
Oh, man. Send Canada my best.
Yeah.
I miss it deeply. My grandparents lived in Pictou, Nova Scotia.
No way. Really?
Yeah. I used to go there all the time. I was just doing an interview talking about it. I was like, man, that old pulp mill smell of Pictou, Nova Scotia.
Gosh, yeah. Crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I love that. Amazing. Yeah. You guys have just released all of the episodes. You guys are cranking out some gems. What are we looking forward to this season?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, it was, after we finished season 2 and then Vice called us and we're like, let's do another season. And it was like, how about 14 episodes? And we're just like 14.
How many?
That's such a big number. Season? So both seasons put together, 1 and 2, was 16 all said and told. So it's pretty much like, let's just double everything, which is great. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but it was just like it was like an undertaking. It was a crazy undertaking, especially just with, the circumstances of the globe being what they are. And so, we'd obviously thought about a lot of episodes that we wanted to do personally, stories we wanted to look into, but it was also like, okay, we got to do some heavy research and we got to reach out to the fan base. What do you guys want to see? And so season 3 is really just an amalgamation of our personal, things that we wanted to get in there. You got your deathmatch stuff, you got your, bio stories, but you also have true crime stuff comes back, and then you have some deep cuts, and we always love the deep cuts because those ones are we don't know hardly anything going in, and then we find out something crazy. And the one that comes to mind for that is talk about Canadian story, the Johnny Canine Bruiser Bedlam story, which is about a guy who was just ostensibly a jobber in the WWF, but he had this whole secret life of being the president of a biker gang in Ontario. And his link to he's linked to the bombing of a police station in Hamilton, and also a potentially he was never found guilty of it, but he was supposedly linked to a double murder that occurred of a somewhere also in Ontario. And so that was just whoa. So now we're getting involved.
Hey, not all Canadians are nice, everybody. gotta
that's
check fast.
Well, I know it's. Well, I was just gonna say it's funny because my dad helps to write the voiceover, for the show, which is funny. My dad helps write the voiceover, and he laughed when we were writing the lines for Canadian Biker Gang, and he's like, "Canadian Biker Gang, how bad can they be?"
Hey, bud, you want to come down? Meet me at the Max Milk. Nothing bad is it's not happening. So just to get it out there, because I have the list in front of me. So you guys have the Brian Pillman, Nick Gage, Collision in Korea, Ultimate Warrior, can't wait to see that, Grizzly Smith, Dynamite Kid, Johnny Canine, the one you were just saying, the Steroid Trials, dun dun dun, I cannot wait for that one too. FFW, Plane Ride from Hell, Luna Vachon, XPW, and Chris Canyon. So yeah, you guys are touching on everything.
Yeah.
What episode are you looking what episode are you most proud of?
It's so hard to say.
Well, they're not all done yet. Yeah. They're not all, out of the whole show?
No,
the whole show?
Of this season.
Oh boy. Well, yeah, it is because we are working on them still. We only really, truthfully, I hope this isn't breaking kayfabe too much, but we only really have the first 4 done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we still have to lock the others, and 4 more of them are really close, and then we have some reenactment shooting to do the back 7 still. But so it's not fair to all the episodes to pick one now because we're not sure how they're gonna evolve. But there's a lot of excitement. Johnny Canine's one that I'm personally very excited about. Brian Pillman is one too. Jason, that story is one we've always wanted to tell, and to be able to, have got Steve Austin for that show was personally an awesome moment, to be able to get him in the show.
You guys get really great guests to come on and to help really project these stories out. How do you book that? How does that all kind of come together for you guys?
Well, we've been lucky with season 3, having the past 2 seasons, we've gotten a little bit more clout, I guess you could say. And so, we probably the Brian Pillman story was a topic we've always wanted to cover, but we knew in order to do it justice, you really had to have, his family involved and, Steve Austin. But had we had not done season 1 and season 2 and had how we handled the Chris Benoit story, I think that has helped us to get more support, and people are more willing to trust us and want to come on board. So, I don't think we would have gotten Steve had we had made the first 2 seasons. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just the way you guys have been able to, delicately yet truthfully be able to tell these stories. I mean, like you said, I mean, looking at even the Owen Hart episode, I mean, being able to have his whole family come in and tell that story. I mean, that's got to be really tough, I would imagine, even just doing those interviews and just like kind of re-delving back into all of that pain for the families.
Exactly. And that's one thing we're very sensitive of, is that we don't want to, because the show has more success, or, we're something we're very conscious of not wanting to exploit anything, like we don't really want to, like we would have done the Owen episode if Martha hadn't and her family been a part of it. Like it just wouldn't have, I mean, you make a show called Dark Side of the Ring. Obviously the Owen story fits into that, but you have to do it authentically and from that firsthand sort of experience, and kind of have them guide you through it as well. And so for us, it was like with that episode was really special because, having Martha on board to hear her side of the story, and that too, just for me, was such an eye opener because, I'd always, that whole, Owen's passing to me was, affected me very personally because my dad's name is Owen. Is like the only other Owen I ever knew growing up was Owen Hart. And I was watching that pay-per-view live when it happened, and I remember just the confusion, and I remember the next day at school, and just, talking about with your friends. And so I had a lot of personal, just want to tell that story. But then at the same time, it's like, when the anniversary of Owen's death came, it was the 20th anniversary, I think, 2 years ago now. And a lot of it was coming back up to the surface, and people were re-looking at Martha's book and her and looking at that. And it was like, wow, her side of the story and what she's kind of gone through and everything from her perspective has really been kind of marginalized over the years. And there's like this weird, bizarre tone that a certain subsect of fans had that was like vitriolic against her. Like you're like she's gatekeeping his legacy in some sort of weird way, or whatever. But no, that's just because wrestling had been consolidated for so many years into just WWE, and there's a conflict there clearly. And so now that there's AEW and now there's other places, her Owen's legacy can be shared in other ways. So for us, that really gave us that motivating factor to revisit a story as tough as that. Was like, okay, now it gives it purpose. And same with the Benoit story. It was super, super difficult, harrowing, horrible, tragic story. But at the same time, the folks involved in it hadn't had a platform to really talk about these feelings, and they wanted to. And then you're talking about family members that were, estranged from this and wanting to come back together.
You guys
so
were
it felt
able
like
to
there was
reconnect family through that. I mean, to be able to see that with Benoit's son and seeing him kind of be able to, see people he'd not seen in such a long time, for you guys to be a driving force to get that connection reestablished was really cool to see.
Well, it was something that was in the works, like they had first started already communicating, and it was kind of serendipitous around the time that we were filming it. And we didn't want to be like super intrusive, like let us film you the moment you guys meet at the airport and, do stuff like that. Cause but there was this but that episode in particular was such an emotional experience for both of us because, we're flies on the wall to all this. And a lot of it was like, I would say most of the people in the episode, it was really their first time, like really talking about it or getting into it, especially, Chris Benoit's son, David, I think might have been the first time he had ever talked about it. So it was just like, for us, like just such a roller coaster of emotions to go through, and just made us check ourselves constantly in how this is being presented and what our motivations are, and making sure we're doing, the most tasteful thing possible, while being true to the story.
Totally. It's being true to the story and like giving people, their families that platform and helping to tell that story without it being exploitive. it's wanting to just tell things as truthfully as possible and do justice to those stories. But I imagine during all the filming of this, I mean, like we said, season 1, 2, now 14 episodes for season 3, there must be some crazy that has happened while you guys are filming. There's got
yeah, I mean, this sorry, I'm Bogarting here.
Jump in, take it.
Just real quick, the documentary filming this year has been tough because of the pandemic and everything. And this season, normally we would just be flying everywhere and bringing all the gear, flying all around, just boom boom boom, film all the interviews. This year we did it all RV style. So the whole show, a lion's share of the 105 interviews we did for season 3 is all on the road in an RV across country multiple times. So it's been these like epic wrestling road trips that we've done. It's almost a show within a show.
Yeah,
and man, we've seen some
filmed.
We've seen some crazy characters, and we've been like on the road during the pandemic, seeing the different states and how they're reacting, the various political climates. It's all leading up to the election. It was just a wild time to be doing all of this and kind of seeing a snapshot of everything. And of course, you're meeting characters in the wrestling business, so you're going to come across a few interesting personalities.
anything that you can share or no?
Oh, I mean, I can share the crazy one.
You getting kicked off? Yeah, you getting kicked off.
Okay. All right, here we go. Big exclusive.
Here we go.
Big exclusive. Here's your big exclusive. No, I'm just kidding. Well, just because of the relation to the John Moxley story, the Nick Gage story. All right, so John obviously knows this guy very well. His name is John Zandig. I don't know if you've ever heard of this name. But he was the guy that owned. Okay, so John Zandig is the former owner of CZW Wrestling. I have no deathmatch I was never a deathmatch wrestling guy. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. I've learned to appreciate, and I can get behind Nick, and I can, Nick.
Same.
But
I'm with you.
A lot of it does kind of make my stomach turn and makes me very nervous and so John Zandig is this fella who was essentially the Nick and John's boss at one point at CCW. And so we wanted to get him in the story because he really was a big part of Nick getting into the business and Nick's rise through CZW and all that stuff. And oh boy, just that day planning the interview was just like there were red flags. It was like, okay, he was really just on edge the whole time about like time, when you're gonna be here, the China virus and all this stuff. And I was like, oh boy. Like, yeah, it's never good when you hear China virus going into any, because we're putting ourselves out there too, and you're like, oh no. So anyway, we roll up to his house, and we're 10 minutes late because we missed one turn in the RV, and if you miss one turn in an RV, you're screwed for about 10-15 minutes. So we get there 10 minutes late, and we're driving past his house, and on the front lawn is a Trump flag that's the biggest one I've ever seen in my entire life. It has a tank on it that says Trump on it, and and we're just getting really like a tank with Trump on it, like it's what's the iconography of this man's home.
Gosh.
So I'm like, oh no, here we go, one of these. Okay, so let me go in, guys. First, I'll go in, and we're walking up to the house.
Of you.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta do it. Put yourself up there. So
yeah.
Walking up to the house, and all of a sudden I see like terrified children running out of the house. That's not good. Crying children, screaming. This isn't good. And I'm just like, oh boy. And then like I get up, and then I'm sure I think maybe his partner or something was like, he's real mad at you, real mad. And I'm just like, oh god. I'm thinking this is not good. So I walk up to the house, and I'm like looking at this Trump flag and staring at it like, oh Jesus. And then my phone starts ringing. And if you ever seen like When a Stranger Calls, that movie, like
yes!
like the moment, it's like the moment when they're like, the call's coming from in the house. Like I had that moment where I looked down and it was one of our producers, and I'm like picking it up, staring at the Trump flag and going on the phone and listening. And she's like, don't go in there. Don't go. He doesn't want you in the house. Turn away, move away. And then just as soon as I'm hearing this, the door bursts open, and this man is very large and tall, and it's like Chris Farley, like Man Down by a River, and he's like kind of just coming out like, you guys screwed it up, you screwed it up, and he's just like Trump hat, Trump everything, screaming at us and in my face and coming right up here like, you blew it, boys, get out of my property and blah blah blah. And it was crazy, and he just like threw us off. And it's like, as soon as I saw that flag and like everything and him barreling out, I was like, I just needed the one reason to be like, no, I'm not doing this, you know. And then so as soon as he's coming out like, you blew it, I was just like, okay, see you later, you know.
Bye.
You know, like, just see you later, you know. And then and it was a bummer, and I don't mean to, you know, throw this guy under the bus, because obviously something's going on there that's, you know, needs to be looked at, but but it just sucked for Nick. I felt like it was such a I mean, yeah, sure, I'm late. You can blame me. You can be mad at me. That's fine. But it sucks for Nick, you know, because it's like, you know, Nick, this guy was a big part of Nick's life, and it would have been great to get in there. And, but yeah, talk about harm's way. I mean, I don't know what was going to happen. And then we wound up inadvertently following him to Walmart, and then he was at Walmart while we were in Walmart. And
oh no, that should be like the like .com exclusive of like the that didn't actually make the show, but like couldn't make the show. That's a whole other level.
Yeah.
You guys actually have it, like, because you guys do Dark Side of the Ring Confidential, right?
Yeah.
How did that all kind of come together through Vice?
Well, they wanted to do like a rerun of the show, and I believe they were looking like a new way to kind of present it, or just like, you know, we always talk about how we have all this extra footage and material from shooting these episodes, and so they were wondering if there was an idea that, you know, where we could present some of that stuff or format it into the show. And we had already been doing like a podcast series with Conrad Thompson kind of after every episode, and that was kind of like a great way for people to hear our behind the scenes stories. And then Evan had pitched that device as like, what's if we take the, you know, what we do in the podcast, bring it to the reruns and kind of format it in a way where we're talking like we do on the podcast, and we get to show these clips. So it seemed to work out.
Oh, it's really cool. Yeah, I know. I just love how many like layers there are to this. I'm so pumped for this next season to come out. Are there any stories that you still want to tell within wrestling that you've not been able to kind of sift through?
Oh man, so many. The John Zandig story. No, sorry. No, man, so many. I mean, like, you know, we always keep them close to our chest because, you know, we always want to be able to give family members the first, you know, we want to be able to give them the first chance, you know, to say, you know, to give us the blessing or not without any weird pressure. But there's a few like every now and then again that, you know, we're like, you know, this is one we'd love to do. One we didn't get around to this season, which I think if we ever do get another season, we'd love to do, is there's a wrestler named Gentleman Chris Adams, who is just this guy from, you know, back in the, I mean, he wrestled in WCW. People, you know, our generation might remember from that, but he also was in World Class, and he was just this amazing wrestler, amazing performer, but out of the ring just had a wild life. Every story you hear about this guy is like, oh yeah, you know, Chris Adams, yeah, he once, you know, super kicked a bartender's eyeball out in Israel, and we had to smug him out of the, you know, country, and you know, like things like that. And everyone's got that story, you know, and so it's like Chris Adams was definitely one, and actually Steve Austin was trained by Chris Adams. Like that was the very first person who showed him the ropes back in the day, and so there's just a lot there for a story, and that's one that definitely would love to be able to tell.
What about you, Jason? Is there one that you kind of want to get out there to the masses?
That's definitely one of them. Because like we're kind of like when I talked about how we wanted to do that narrative scripted series idea of of the territory days, like doing the Bruiser Brody story, the Gino Hernandez story, and the Von Erich story. We kind of call that our Texas trilogy. Okay. And for us, that's kind of, if we were going to do the television series version, it would have been like those kind of 3 episodes, and, you know, really kind of centering around World Class Championship Wrestling. So
the best territory. Yeah.
So the story of Chris Adams is kind of like the 4th, part of that, that trilogy. And, to see when you hear this, like the stories about Chris Adams, or like Evan said, like everyone's got a crazy story who knew him that sounds so over the top and unreal.
Oh, I mean, when I first started on the road with WWE, like hearing some of these stories, you're like, wait, what? Like there's so many, just like, I mean, not necessarily to the extent of deserving like their own like Dark Side of the Ring episode, but just like the crazy shit that would happen before the world of wrestling got tidied up nice and clean.
Right.
One more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, did you find, like, because you probably met like a lot of like wrestlers who are like generational, you know, like, would you get like stories from them about like, you know, their parents and then their grandparents and
not as much through that, but so when I first started traveling on the road, I rode with JBL and Michael Cole.
Oh, wow.
So they were my first riding partners. So yeah, I would always, JBL is such an insane storyteller. I mean, you can hear his stories he does with Jerry Briscoe,
I love
podcast that they have. But yeah, I mean, most of my crazy wild stories would come from JBL.
I'm sure.
I can imagine.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's
give
great.
That
he's
guy
awesome.
a couple tall boys. He'll tell you all sorts of stories. It's the best.
Oh, totally.
That was like the best way for it was like the best way for me to like break into the business, to be like, wait, what happened? Like they
wait,
really
so you tackled this guy at the baggage claim for why?
Exactly. Yeah, like wait, you actually fought a bear in a bar? What the fuck? Like these just insane stories between them all. But it's
and speaking of you know, folks that are, you know, still in the company at WWE, and someone whose story we'd love to be able to tell, the kind of is also another Texas related to the Texas story of the world class as well, is that, man, Jason and I have many times been like, you know, we would do a Freebirds episode any time, you know, that can happen. I don't know if he would get the approval to do such a thing, but I'm starting to now just be like, I'm going to put this out there. Like, I would love to do a Freebirds episode because there's so much there, you know, with Terry Gordy and obviously Michael, and just like, man, the stories, those guys, their bond, and of course, you know, with the Von Erichs, it just it has to have. We have to petition for this somehow. Like this. I
think start online, get the petition going. But I feel like Michael Hayes, obviously, I feel like he'd be down to tell those stories. Just a matter if he can actually get in there and tell those stories.
If I have to change my fashion to look like his, I will.
Can I help with that? I think that I think I have my finger on the pulse with that.
Yes.
I'll get you a fedora, some like alligator shoes, and
I just want that episode to
purple.
Exactly. I want the episode to just open with a slow-mo shot of his closet opening, and you're just like just seeing like all this like Dick Tracy
I want to go with him, like when he goes to buy his clothes. Like what are these shops? Where do they exist? Are they all custom done? I don't know.
Does he have a designer? Does he have like a personal designer?
I like to think that he does, but
he must.
At the same time, I highly
And who's
doubt
that?
it.
I don't Who's know. That? We got to get them in the episode too.
Yeah, honestly, bring that person in, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so May 6th, everyone can. You guys are starting with the Brian Pillman episode. It's a 2-parter, correct?
Oh yeah.
All right, perfect. That's all about to go down. And Evan, before I let you go, I realized that your dad was an A&R.
Oh yes,
like a manager. He's like in the music world, like worked with like Weird Al.
My dad has been a lifer in the music business, and he was also a manager. You know, I got to put him over for a minute. He's not just a voiceover collaborator with Dark Side of the Ring,
but he just write the voiceovers, or he performs them?
No, me and him basically, like, no voiceover will make it to Chris Jericho unless it's been approved by my father.
Okay.
So he's just as part of the creative writing process. Like, you know, he knows how to somehow make it work.
He's been there. He's been doing it with us since the very first episode.
Oh, I love that.
It kind of goes to show like how homegrown that show is too. Like, we're getting our parents to work on it. Evan's mom came up with the title for the show too.
No way.
You know, and you know, we got to give credit to Evan's dad, because when Evan was a kid, his father like worked on this like CD that had Stone Cold Steve Austin involved in it.
Oh yeah, get that CD for us.
And so he got Evan in this like backstage, poster signing, and he took a VHS camera and he filmed Evan. Evan's just like a little kid. He's just like this, little miniature.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
Off right now, and he like musters up the courage to like ask Steve Austin like a question. He asks him about Bill Goldberg, and at the time, there was a lot of comparisons to Stone Cold and Bill Goldberg, so it was a kind of a controversial question to ask, even for a little kid. So
11, yeah.
It was pretty amazing when we got to film an interview, just a few months ago with Steve Austin, and there it came full circle, and you could see Evan there, talking to Steve, and we even brought it up in the end, and he was so cool.
I did. I was like, so when I met you when I was 11, I asked you a question. I want to ask you the same question right now. What do you think of Bill Goldberg? And he was so. He was so unfazed by it. Like he was so just like, I'm sure he gets that all the time. He can't like walk to the car without someone being like, I met you when I was,
yeah.
And he just is like, he's like, well, I probably told you, and it's like when I met you, back when he was just so genuine about his answer. It was so cool. And it was amazing. But yeah, so my dad had some hand in Stone Cold Metal.
I love that.
His real accolade to put him over is he was actually Prince's first manager, which is
shut the
crazy.
fuck up.
Yeah.
What?
No, I won't. No, he
Amazing. Is he like from Minneapolis?
Yeah, we're all from Minneapolis. Yeah.
Okay,
so,
got it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, right. I did read that. I just keep thinking you're just in Brooklyn. Duh. Right. I did my research. I promise.
No one's really from Brooklyn. No, and he. No, but he and my mom met Prince when he was very young, 17, around that time period. And my dad got him his first record deal, and Prince lived in the basement of their house in the West Coast when they all moved over there. Yeah, so he's part of that whole history. And he actually has a book out. He has a memoir out about that whole time because it's so formative, for Prince and his career. And so I kind of grew up in the shadow of that, which is awesome. But it's it's great because he always encouraged all of my passions, and he was super. It's like, oh, my kid likes wrestling. Well, we got to do Stone Cold Metal, or things like that.
Cool.
So
you and I kind of have like similar backgrounds on it, because my dad also has been in the music industry from the get-go, and he didn't manage Prince. But a shout out to Nova Scotia. He worked with Anne Murray for 15 years. Yeah.
No way. I'm a huge mark for Anne Murray. Like I can every album right here.
So great.
Yeah, he's a big mark for that.
We grew up I would be like backstage at rehearsals for Anne Murray. She sent stuff to the hospital when I was born. He was like very entrenched with Anne Murray.
Wow.
Whoa, you just blew my mind. That's I love Prince, but Anne Murray for me is like
from Nova Scotia. You got to give a little bit of love. But it was also my dad that got me in the door through wrestling, because he was working at the Sky Dome in Toronto at the time, because he was working at all these different concert venues. So he's like, oh, we've got wrestling. I was like, I'll come down and check it out. And I remember he kind of snuck us in through the back door, and there was China and Mankind, and The Rock was there. Just seeing all of these larger than life people and getting to see them. But I remember talking to Mick Foley about that after, and I was like, your Austin story of I met you when I was a kid. He pretends he remembers. He doesn't. But it's
right. That's exactly a very similar experience. My dad was able to pull some strings. There was thousands of people waiting outside to meet him, and then I got the private thing, and to be like, hey, what do you think of Bill Goldberg? And that's what was my first shoot interview. So that's the genesis. It all goes back to that moment. So
you got those exclusive moments.
It's funny too. Last time I had dinner with Owen, Evan's dad, we're sitting there, and he's like, what's interesting? It's you've gotten to interview all your action figures.
It's so weird. That is the weirdest part about this whole thing is we had action figures of all these guys, and that we're interviewing for most of them. And it's just it's so weird because sometimes, they're telling you harrowing things that have happened in their lives, and you had them as a toy, and then now they're like, you're this kind of surrogate therapist in some ways. It is kind of surreal in a lot of ways.
It really is. I mean, once you like unpeel all of those layers of these, especially when you're looking at guys and women from wrestling that have been these literal real life superheroes, and then once you realize they are human beings that have like been through it and have not had cushy lives, it's really eye opening. Yeah, it's wild.
It's a hard. There's some harsh consequences to it too, which, we kind of not, we wrestle with that too. It's like, we love wrestling so much and we're so inspired by it, and it's such a big part of our life. But there's also, there's a dark side to it as well. But
it's also, in wrestling for so long, there's been like the side of it that like, toxic masculinity kind of makes you like it's almost clouded over wrestling in a way where people, I felt like, haven't been able to be open as much as they could, especially wrestlers. So when you see these guys that, like Evan said, we grew up with their action figures and they're playing these super tough characters, and then to see them be very vulnerable is, I think, a very empowering thing.
Absolutely.
Even for myself, it's like to see, these guys talk about these really like, real emotions. It just, I don't know, it's just like inspiring that, makes you feel more comfortable to be able to talk about your own emotions in a way.
Certainly. I mean, anyone in the wrestling world, it's like you're never half in. You're all the way invested into this world. And it can suck you in for better or for worse. And now we get to hear about all those stories on Dark Side of the Ring. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It was really fun to get to chat and pick your guys' brains. Make sure to check out Dark Side of the Ring. That is premiering on May the 6th on Vice, starting with that Brian Pillman episode number 1.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, guys.